I never thought a company's HR manager would try to destroy me over a potluck chili contest. Yeah. That's how it started, with something as harmless as lunch. My name's Evan Reyes, 32, a project coordinator at Greyridge Logistics, a corporate beast where buzzwords mattered more than actual work. I wasn't a troublemaker, just the guy who got things done. My coworkers liked me, my deadlines were clean, and I had this naive belief that if you worked hard, people respected that. Then came Sandra Blake, the HR director. Sandra had a smile that could cut glass, wide, corporate perfect, and absolutely fake. Everyone knew she was more politician than professional, a master at playing neutral, while stabbing you in the back with policy citations. We used to get along fine, or at least I thought we did. She'd ask me to help her with team engagement stuff, surveys, events, morale boosters. I didn't mind. It broke up the monotony. That's how I ended up running the company Chili Cook-Off, an annual HR stunt to build community. When I won, by a landslide, something in Sandra's smile cracked. She congratulated me in front of everyone, clapping a little too loudly, voice syrupy sweet. But the next morning, I was summoned to HR. Her tone was different this time. Cold. Precise. Evan, she began, sliding a folder across the table. A few employees came forward with concerns. Apparently, you were pressuring votes during the cook-off. I blinked. Pressuring votes? Sandra, it was a chili contest. She crossed her legs, the heel of her shoe tapping like a metronome of condescension. Company events are considered formal workplace activities. Integrity is crucial. We can't have employees feeling manipulated. It was absurd. I laughed. She didn't. That's when I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a setup. Sandra launched into a rehearsed speech about inclusivity and professional standards. Every word was coded in HR jargon but loaded with accusation. She said they were reviewing my behavior, that it might affect my standing for the upcoming promotion. A week later, she accidentally forwarded a disciplinary email, meant for me, to the entire office. My name, bolded at the top, with inappropriate conduct during company event, in the subject line. People stared. Whispers followed me in the halls. And Sandra? She looked satisfied. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the company policy manual on my desk, the one I'd helped format for HR 6 months earlier. Page 73. Employee grievance and retaliation procedures. My hands tightened around the binder. For the first time, I wasn't just angry. I was calculating. Sandra wanted to play by the book? Fine. I'd bury her in it. But first, I needed proof and patience. Because if I moved too fast, she'd win again. And something told me, she was already watching. The Monday after the incident, I walked into the office pretending everything was normal, but nothing was. Conversations stopped when I passed. Slack messages that used to include me suddenly didn't. And Sandra? She was all smiles. She called me Evan Buddy. In front of the team, patting my shoulder like we were pals. But her eyes, they said something else entirely. Calculating. Watching. I tried to tell myself I was being paranoid. HR just had to review the situation. Maybe it'd blow over. But small things started to feel off. First, my project access. One morning, I logged into our internal dashboard, only to find my permissions temporarily restricted. When I asked IT, they said, HR requested the change. Then came the scheduling shifts. Meetings I'd organized were suddenly rescheduled, without notice. My reports went directly to Sandra for review, even though she wasn't my manager. It was like my job was being dismantled piece by piece, quietly, methodically. At lunch, I caught fragments of a conversation between Sandra and Liam, one of the senior analysts. Her voice was low, but I caught a line that made my stomach turn. No, don't send it from your account. I'll handle it. When she saw me pass, she laughed, a sharp, brittle sound, and said, "Oh, Evan. Just work stuff, you know how it is." But the tone was wrong. Too defensive. That night, I checked my email. An anonymous note had appeared in my inbox. "Watch your back. She's not done with you." No sender. No trace. Just that single chilling sentence. I barely slept. The next day, HR sent out a new workplace conduct reminder memo, written by Sandra, of course. It outlined guidelines for ethical participation in company events, and listed examples of behavior that could be perceived as coercive. One of the examples matched my chili contest word for word. That's when I started keeping notes, timestamps, screenshots, everything. But the more I documented, the worse things got. Sandra began to forget to invite me to department check-ins. She gave public praise to my coworker Rachel for my work. When I tried to speak up, she smiled sweetly and said, "Oh, I must have mixed up the files. Happens to the best of us." Every word felt like a slap wrapped in corporate courtesy. I could feel the walls closing in. The company I'd given 5 years to was turning on me, and Sandra was pulling the strings. Still, I didn't have proof. Just whispers, coincidences, and that damned smile of hers. But something deeper told me this wasn't just about me or the contest. Sandra was hiding something. And if I didn't uncover it soon, she'd make sure I never worked anywhere again. The truth didn't hit all at once. It came in pieces, buried in email threads, calendar invites, and one very poorly hidden PDF. It was late on a Thursday night when I found it. I'd stayed after hours, pretending to catch up on reports. But really, I was digging. My access had been restricted, sure, but I'd built most of the company's internal workflow. I knew where the cracks were. That's how I stumbled onto the shared HR drive. Tucked inside a folder marked Q4 Conduct Reviews, I found a document named Disciplinary Summary, Reyes, Evan. My heart stopped. I opened it. The file was a report supposedly written by Sandra, only it wasn't just a summary. It was a character assassination. She'd accused me of repeated inappropriate behavior, harassment toward female employees, and manipulation of workplace events for personal gain. There were fake witness statements, complete with dates and anonymous quotes. One even claimed I'd threatened retaliation against HR. All signed off, report compiled by Sandra Blake, HR Director. I stared at it, my pulse hammering. My hands actually shook. None of it was true. None of it. Then I saw the email thread attached, a conversation between Sandra and Liam, the senior analyst I'd overheard before. "Sandra, once this goes through, he's out. We can use the contest fiasco as justification. The COO wants someone compliant in that position, not a hero." "Liam, are you sure this'll stick?" "Sandra, trust me. The board eats this kind of ethical concern stuff up. And the promotion opens up nicely for you, doesn't it?" That's when it clicked. This wasn't just humiliation, it was career sabotage. She was framing me to clear a path for Liam's promotion. I felt the air leave my lungs. Betrayal burned in my chest. Hot, suffocating. I'd spent months helping HR clean up their broken systems, defending Sandra when others whispered about her backdoor deals. And she'd used that trust, that access, to destroy me from the inside. For a moment, I just sat there in the blue glow of the monitor, trying to breathe. My entire professional life, 5 years of loyalty, reduced to a handful of fabricated paragraphs. I wanted to storm into her office, scream, demand she fix it. But that would only feed her narrative. So I closed the file, exhaled slowly, and reached for the company policy manual sitting beside me. Page 73. Employee Grievance and Retaliation Procedures. Page 85. Whistleblower Protection Policy. Page 102. Evidence Retention and Chain of Custody Protocols. Sandra had built her trap inside company rules. But I knew those rules better than she did, because I helped write them. And if she wanted a war of paperwork and procedure, she just handed me the battlefield. For 2 days, I walked through the office like a ghost. The smiles felt fake, the laughter distant. Every, "Hey, Evan," carried that subtle undertone of pity, the kind people reserve for someone already half buried. Sandra had done her job well. My credibility was bleeding out quietly in the hallways of Greyridge Logistics. I kept my head down, pretending I didn't notice. But inside, the betrayal replayed on loop, every falsified quote, every smug line in that report. It wasn't just an attack on my career. It was an attack on who I was. By Friday afternoon, I was running on caffeine and pure numbness. I stayed late again, the office empty except for the soft hum of printers and the buzz of the vending machine. That's when I saw it, taped crookedly on the break room fridge. A flyer for the upcoming Integrity in the Workplace seminar, hosted by Sandra Blake, HR Director. The hypocrisy hit me like a slap. I remember standing there, staring at her name under that word, integrity, until my vision blurred. And then something in me snapped. I wasn't going to let her bury me. Not quietly. Not with a lie. All week, I'd been asking myself why me, why this, why now? But suddenly, the why didn't matter. The how did. How to fight back. How to expose her. How to make her choke on the same policies she weaponized against everyone else. That's when the memory came back. 6 months earlier, when Sandra had begged me to help digitize the company's outdated HR manual. I'd spent hours cross-referencing pages, ensuring consistency between the digital and printed versions. And I remembered something crucial. Sandra had cut corners. She never filed the official update with legal. That meant the old version, the one I still had saved, was technically the active policy. My heart started racing. Page 73. The retaliation clause. It protected employees from disciplinary action following participation in good faith company events. The chili contest was a good faith event. Her entire case against me, every email, every report, violated the company's own manual. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. It wasn't joy. It was something sharper, like the first clean inhale after drowning. I stayed up all night building my case. Not emotional rants, not accusations, documentation. Every message, every access log, every version of that manual with metadata timestamps. By sunrise, my fear had burned off completely. Sandra had tried to humiliate me in front of everyone. Now, I was going to humiliate her, by making her own policies the rope she'd hang herself with. Because when you fight someone like her, you don't raise your voice. You raise evidence. I treated revenge like a project, because that's what I do. Projects need objectives, deadlines, and airtight evidence. No yelling in hallways. No dramatic confrontations. Just a careful, unforgiving sequence that turned everything Sandra had used against me back on her. I spent 2 days compiling every falsified document she'd planted. The disciplinary summary, the anonymous witness statements, the email thread between Sandra and Liam. I copied metadata, timestamps, file creation histories, version notes, and exported IT logs showing who uploaded and who modified each file. Little things mattered. The anonymous statement that originated from a laptop assigned to HR, the draft saved under Sandra's user account, the email headers that betrayed who actually sent them. Fear kept most people quiet, but a few were quietly furious. Rachel, who'd been credited for my work, and a junior analyst who'd seen Sandra edit statements late at night. I met them one-on-one, off-site, explained the protection clauses in the manual, and asked them to document what they knew in writing. Not dramatic testimonies. Factual notes, dates, and signatures. I made sure they understood whistleblower protections and how their written accounts would be used. The key was the version control we'd failed to finalize months earlier. I retrieved the legal stamped PDF I'd kept on my encrypted drive, the manual that was still technically active. That file held the retaliation clause, the grievance procedure, and the chain of custody rules Sandra had ignored when she forged the disciplinary report. If the case stayed procedural, she would lose. I printed everything, audited logs, signed witness notes, the original manual, put it in a binder and duplicated the digital files across 3 secure locations: my drive, an anonymous whistleblower upload, and a sealed email to the company's external counsel with a red receipt. I didn't send threats. I sent facts. Timing was everything. The integrity seminar Sandra was hosting was public, scheduled, and a perfect stage for her PR. I'd notify legal and the COO quietly. Here's the evidence. Here's the policy. Here are witnesses willing to speak. I didn't want a fight in the hallway. I wanted the board to see she'd weaponized policies for personal gain. Through it all, Sandra strutted like a queen. She posted seminar slides about ethics and sent out polite, performative emails. Liam smiled brighter each day. Promotions have a way of making people careless. They still felt in control. They still believed the narrative they'd written. But control is a fragile thing when someone you wronged understands the rules better than you do. I rehearsed what I'd say, but rehearsals were secondary to documents. Evidence doesn't get emotional. It gets impossible. The night before the seminar, I closed the binder, felt its weight, and wondered if this would be enough. The office was quiet, but the air tasted like a storm. Tomorrow, they'd step onto the stage and preach integrity while the proof of their hypocrisy sat in my bag. I slept 3 hours. Then I woke and walked into the building like a man carrying a verdict. The day of the Integrity in the Workplace seminar felt like stepping into a theater where everyone else knew their lines, except me. The conference room was packed. HR staff, mid-level managers, even the COO had shown up. Sandra stood at the podium, radiating fake warmth, her voice smooth and confident as she spoke about honesty and accountability in the modern workplace. It was almost impressive, the way she could twist words she didn't believe in. I sat near the back, binder in hand, calm, the kind of calm that only comes when you've already rehearsed every outcome. When she finished her introduction, the COO stood to thank her for upholding company values. That was my cue. I raised my hand. Actually, I'd like to ask something about those values. Every head turned. Sandra's smile flickered, just a tiny crack, but I saw it. Go ahead, Evan, she said, sugary and strained. Always happy to clarify. I stood, heart hammering but voice steady. You said integrity means honesty, right? Transparency. Of course, she replied, still performing. Then maybe we should talk about honesty in documentation. The room shifted. She blinked. I'm not sure what you mean. I stepped forward, placing the binder on the table near the projector. This is the company's HR policy manual, the original version, filed with legal and time-stamped 6 months before your update. According to this, retaliating against an employee after a company event is a violation of Clause 7.3, which means your disciplinary report against me isn't just unethical. I paused, letting the silence breathe. It's a breach of company policy. The COO frowned. Sandra, is that true? Her voice faltered for the first time. That manual was outdated. No, I cut in, flipping open a printout of email logs. You never filed the updated version with compliance. And here's proof you used the old document's header to fabricate a report, one that accused me of misconduct so you could justify replacing me with your preferred candidate. I pressed a key on the laptop, and the projector screen flickered, showing the email exchange between her and Liam, the one that ended with, "The CEO wants someone compliant. The contest gives us cause." A stunned murmur rippled through the room. Sandra's face drained of color. This is taken out of context, she stammered. I turned to the COO. Context. You can check the server metadata yourself. It's all there. Every timestamp, every edit, and every policy she broke doing it. For a moment, the room was frozen. Then the COO spoke quietly. Sandra, I need you to step outside. Now. She tried to protest, but security moved faster. Her composure cracked completely, a flash of panic beneath that perfect HR mask. As she was escorted out, she turned toward me, whispering, "You'll regret this." I met her eyes. I already did. Now it's your turn. The CEO turned back to me, jaw tight. Evan, we'll need your statement and your copies of the documentation. I handed over the binder. My hands didn't shake this time. When I walked out of that room, the whispers were different. No pity this time. Respect, or maybe awe. Sandra had tried to humiliate me in front of everyone. Instead, she'd been undone by the same policies she thought made her untouchable. The fallout wasn't instant, but when it came, it was absolute. 3 days after the seminar, the company went silent. HR meetings were postponed indefinitely. The COO's assistant sent me a curt message. Please make yourself available for a formal review this afternoon. When I walked in, Sandra's office was empty. Desk cleared, nameplate gone. The COO sat behind the table, flanked by legal counsel. He didn't waste time. Evan, after reviewing the evidence, we've confirmed gross misconduct, falsification of records, and retaliation by Ms. Blake. She's been terminated, effective immediately. It didn't feel real. Not at first. Months of humiliation, suspicion, and quiet rage had built to this one moment, and now it was just done. She didn't act alone, the COO added, his tone sharpening. Liam has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. I nodded slowly. I appreciate that. Then came the part one didn't expect. The board also reviewed your handling of the situation. You documented everything precisely, followed procedure, and demonstrated professionalism under duress. Frankly, it's the kind of integrity we should be promoting here. He slid a paper across the table. We'd like to offer you the role Sandra vacated. Interim HR Director, effective immediately. I almost laughed. Me, the guy she tried to erase, now inheriting her position, her office, her title. The irony was perfect. I accepted with a steady hand. Over the next few weeks, I cleaned house. Quietly, professionally. I revised the HR manual properly this time. Filed, signed, transparent. The false witnesses withdrew their statements. Rachel got credit for her actual work. And the whisper network that once mocked me started echoing something different. Respect. One afternoon, as I packed the last of Sandra's forgotten things into a box, I found her old nameplate at the bottom of a drawer, heavy brushed steel, still gleaming under the fluorescent light. For a moment, I just stared at it. Then I placed it face down in the box and shut the lid. Her chapter was over. Mine had just begun. I'd learned something through all of it. That power doesn't come from titles or policies or even revenge. It comes from knowing the truth and refusing to let someone rewrite it. Sandra tried to humiliate me using the company's rulebook. But in the end, the same rulebook became her undoing. Because justice isn't loud. It's procedural. And when it's done right, it leaves signatures, not scars. If you've ever had someone twist the rules against you, if you've ever been made to feel small by someone who thought they were untouchable, this story's for you. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in my place? And if you love a good real-life revenge story, the kind where karma arrives in a 3-piece suit, hit subscribe. You won't want to miss what comes next. Fire justice served. Policy approved.